All right. Hello, everybody. We don't have to sit in silence any longer. You guys can sit in silence for a little bit longer. We'll keep everybody else on mute. Let me go ahead and mute Paul. Yeah, so just going to do a quick introduction and we'll get started since it is the top of the hour. My name is Brett Ethridge. I think you all know me. That's how you found out about this webinar. So excited to see some of you guys again. For those of you I can't see, that's okay. We have the chat area going, so make sure you're using the chat area while we're kind of going through the presentation. The way it's going to work tonight, obviously we have special guest trainer Hillary Schubach of Shine MBA Admissions Consulting with us. She'll introduce herself here shortly. But what's going to happen is I'm actually going to turn it over to her, and she's going to present for about 20 to 25 minutes. And she's going to run through some of the most commonly asked questions about the graduate and MBA admissions process. A lot of the questions that you guys probably already have, some questions that you guys have emailed me that I want to make sure that we cover. And she'll go through all of that, kind of best practices for different aspects of the application. Then she'll turn it back to me and I'll ask her some more questions and we'll kind of do a Q&A between she and I. And then we'll turn it over to you guys to ask her your questions, any questions that she hasn't already answered either in her own presentation or in the questions I ask her. So there's a good chance we'll get to your questions in due time during today's conversation. If we don't, you'll have an opportunity at the end to ask them. But in the meantime, go ahead and ask them in the chat area, even if you have clarification questions on something she's talking about. So when she goes into presentation mode, she's not going to easily be able to keep up with your questions, but I will. So I'll be able to kind of take note of your follow-on questions. I can kind of ask her those questions afterwards, so she doesn't have to feel like she has to keep up with the whole chat area while she's presenting, but I'll be checking that out. So definitely do that. And I guess one final bit of housekeeping, just kind of lets everybody turn off our cell phones and let's kind of lock in, because I know I've heard Hillary present before. I've heard her share the information, some of the information she's going to be sharing with you, and it's awesome. It's incredible information that I wish I had before I started my own graduate school application journey. And just a little caveat on that, Hillary really focuses and specializes on MBA admissions. So for business school, I know some of you are going to be applying to non-business degree programs, and that's totally okay, because I know a lot of what she's going to be sharing totally applies to you as well in terms of letters of recommendation and essay writing, and just how to position yourself will totally apply for you regardless of the program that you're applying to. So I know you're in store for a treat. By way of background, Hillary and I met. I immediately connected with Hillary because she's a fellow Duke University undergrad. So she and I connected at a Duke alumni event in Denver when we were both living in Denver, immediately hit it off because we had that connection. And then she and I continued to kind of do some work together when I was doing the GMAT stuff and she was doing MBA admissions stuff back in Denver. She has since moved on to California. I'm now in Knoxville, Tennessee, but we've maintained the relationship through an organization called AGAC, which is an organization of admissions consultants. Now, I am not myself an admissions consultant, which is why I invited Hillary today to share with all of you, because this is her expertise. And she is part of that renowned organization. She got her MBA from Harvard Business School back in 2001, and her work experience is in marketing and brand management. She still consults in that area. She worked for Kraft and Unilever in their marketing and brand management departments. So that's her experience, which really gives her incredible expertise to know kind of that world as she thinks about branding yourself during the MBA admissions process. So I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself and then take it away. Again, for the next 20, 25 minutes, she'll just be presenting. So get ready to take some notes and then we'll come back and we'll do some Q&A. So Hillary, welcome. And
thank you.
We're excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the great introduction. You've made my job easy. And when I first met Brett, it was really nice to have a chance to connect with him, because really his work ends where mine picks up, and vice versa. You know, I do everything but test prep, and I'm in a really good position to say to a prospective applicant, you may want to take your test again. You might need some additional support, and I can send people to Brett for coaching. But I personally, I haven't seen the GMAT in a long, long time, so I'm more of a judge of GMAT scores rather than a preparer of GMAT scores. But it's really, really nice to have great GMAT and GRE resources in the work we do at Shine. So I'm going to attempt to get my slides up for you. I know we practiced this. Let's just see how I did here. Okay. So someone's going to have to confirm for me that this is up. Okay, Brett, can you confirm for me that I've done this correctly? Can you see it?
I cannot.
Okay, then give me a minute. I will just fix that. I think I know what we do. Oh, yes. Oh, to share, right?
Yes.
Share screen. Yes, okay, we are so close. Okay, so, whoops, nope, I think I just emailed it. Let's try, sorry. We knew I was gonna do this.
No, you're good. You're good. Now just click start slideshow.
Okay, yeah. So now you're looking at the slide presentation?
That's
Excellent.
it. We're in business.
Okay, beautiful. If only the toolbar wasn't right on top of the slides. Is it right? Is it like that for you all as well, or can you see okay?
No, my toolbar is off to the side. I think you're fine, and you can move yours out of the way so you can see your own slides.
Okay, well, fortunately I know them pretty well, so all right, that's good. So Brett has given you a little bit of this information already, so I won't spend tons of time on my background, but really the reason why I'm in a great position to share some of this knowledge with you is, first and foremost, I've been there. I did apply to grad school. I actually took the GRE and the GMAT, and I applied to business school. In the process of applying to business schools myself, I had to write 31 different essays. It was a long time ago. There were a lot more essay questions. I filled out 6 applications. Oops, sorry, I see there's a funny word here. So I was accepted to 5 schools is what that's supposed to say. And then I spent 2 years at Harvard getting my MBA there. And so, from firsthand experience, I've seen it all. But then on top of it, I really do take a marketing lens to the work I do. And so that's a big part of the way I think about how to market yourself to business school. It really is a marketing exercise when it comes down to it. Schools will say things like, don't market yourself to us. And what they mean is, don't tell us what you think we want to hear. They want you to be authentic. But at the same time, it's a marketing exercise. You are on a shelf, like any other brand on a shelf in a store, and they're looking through many, many different options. And how do you stand out? How do you capture their attention? So it's really important to understand, what you bring to the table and what your brand's about and what your ingredients are. So that's the way I've been thinking about this work. And now, since 1999, I have actually been working, in addition to marketing, I've been working in MBA admissions consulting, and actually for the past 10 years, I've been full-time, 100% dedicated to doing just this. I founded Shine a little over 10 years ago now, and I work with applicants to all the top business schools, Stanford, Harvard, Chicago, Kellogg, and everything in between. I have some clients that are not candidates for the top schools, and that's great too. I've had clients go to Purdue and Drexel, whatever each person's journey is what I help to prepare them for. But it is most typical that somebody that works with an admissions consultant is gunning for some of the top programs. And then, as Brett mentioned, the AGAC organization that we both belong to is actually a great point to mention, because we attend conferences as AGAC members with the admissions directors of these schools that you are targeting. So our next conference is in about 5 weeks, and I will be sitting in a room with not only the members of the admissions committees at the host schools, which changes every year, but admissions committees fly in from Asia, from Europe, and of course all the top US schools, and they share. We have panels, we talk about the different trends and issues at stake. And anyway, the point is that the information I'm sharing with you is not only from my experience working with clients, marketing myself to business schools successfully, but also it's from spending about 9 years of these conferences with AGAC, where they're just literally telling us what you need to know. So the following slides are just a snippet of the many things that we could have shared today. There's so much information, but this will certainly get you started thinking about some of the most popular questions that we hear and most interesting issues. So with that, let us just There we go. Okay, let's dive right into the question that a lot of people are wondering as they get started is, what are the admissions officers looking for? And this is centered around business school again. However, there is not a quality on this list that an admissions officer of any school wouldn't tremendously value. And especially in the game of business school, you have to bring something else to the table besides just your academics. It's not just numbers. I know a number of other kind of graduate programs do readily invite people to apply straight out of college, and they're not expecting them to have work experience. But business school is unique in that it's not just the LSAT, it's not just the MCAT, it's not just your GPA from college. It's a whole host of other qualities, because that's what you bring to the classroom in business school. It's very discussion based. So that said, there are a number of things that they are looking for. And now I will ask you to think for just a split second, who do you think they want? You don't have to volunteer your answer in the chat, but just think for a minute. If I said to you, the admissions officers are looking for future ... like future who? What kinds of people are they hoping to bring into these programs and graduate and go off to do great things? And in a nutshell, in my view, the answer is really twofold. One is they're looking for leaders, future leaders, people to lead, manage organizations. And it doesn't have to be an entire company. It can even be just a business unit, a division of an organization, or a nonprofit or any type of entity. But they're looking for people to lead, to propose ideas, to take initiative. And the second thing really is managers when it comes down to it. And there's some overlap between what a leader is and what a manager is. But leaders, there are a number of qualities which we'll discuss that comprise leadership. And then really just people to run organizations. So that business school in particular is graduate school of management. It's an MBA, it's a management program. So this, in essence, is what they're really trying to glean from their candidates, their potential to be leaders, potential to be managers. And if you did nothing else but convey these qualities in your application and have them ooze from every corner of your resume or essays, then you will have done a really good job in your application. But of course, there are some nuances to that, so let's go into some additional qualities. So some very highly valued characteristics are the following. And by the way, not all of them are going to apply to one given candidate. So the key is to just try to think about which ones may resonate with you and to try to bring out those qualities as best as you can. So first and foremost, they're looking for high achievers, and certainly that's academically, but also in work. I mean, they want you to bring career experience to the table. They're looking for you to get recommendations from people who can vouch for your achievements. So high achievers all around, all across the board is very important. They're very eager to see people who display intellectual curiosity, hunger for learning, somebody that is always trying to look for something new, a new way to think about things. That's very important. People who take initiative, which again is a key part of leadership. You're somebody that comes up with ideas or is just comfortable doing things the way things are done every day. They love people who take initiative, who think differently, and to that end, innovators is not so much speaking to somebody that creates a new tech product, is willing to launch a company and be an entrepreneur, but just thinking in new ways, thinking about questions in different ways, willing to take a stand against the grain. Maybe the entire team is headed in the direction to the left, and you really feel strongly that they are missing an opportunity and should be going to the right. Are you the kind of person that would raise your hand and say, I think we're missing something here, we need to consider something else, and be that unpopular person just to really stay true to your convictions? They appreciate people that are persuasive. Again, it's a part of leadership, but it's one thing to have ideas, it's another to actually be able to persuade people to listen to your ideas and and have influence. Team players is really important. As you can see, this picture down below is a typical scene at grad school, typical scene at business school especially. You've got your multicultural team. There's one or two women on every team and a whole bunch of men, and then there's people of different ethnic backgrounds. This is a typical 5-person team in business school, and they want to just see you playing nicely in the sandbox with other people. So your entire application needs to include a sense of how you perform and work with others. They also want you to be, not only socially aware, which is part of how you perform in teams and recognizing that there are consequences to your actions, but also just being self-aware. Like, do you have a sense of what you're strong at, where your opportunities lie, where your development areas are? They love people who display mentorship. Are you the kind of person that might stop and help a teammate with a weaker area? Maybe stay after class and being kind to help a classmate with accounting if that's your area of expertise and he or she is struggling with that area. So that, the quality of helping others, whether it's a teammate or whether it's somebody in a disadvantaged position in the community, it's a positive valued characteristic. Adaptability is important because you are going to go into business school with your own area of expertise or your areas of exposure, and you're going to learn a million different other ways of looking at things from your classmates. And are you the kind of person that's going to be stubborn and constantly spend your 2 years fighting for the right to prove that you are correct in everything you say and do, or will you soak in these new perspectives and rethink everything that you've ever considered? So with that is in part emotional intelligence, and especially in the admissions process, it's really important to be emotionally intelligent, to not be overly needy as it relates to the admissions committee, calling, emailing silly questions that you can find on the website, and just handling yourself with poise throughout the process. And then, also, of course, being likable, again, in this team setting is really important, and making sure you're going to be somebody that your classmates like, but also somebody that adds value. Will you contribute? If they give you this precious spot in the class, will you bring something special to your classmates' experience and the entire community at school so that you will enhance the entire program for those who are in it with you? And then in general, are you going to graduate and go off and be a strong contributor in the organizations that you're a part of? So again, this plus the prior slide, if you can just demonstrate these and other characteristics that exemplify strong leadership qualities, strong management qualities, and this just, just like emanates from every word on your application page, you're done. You're in great shape. I mean, that is half the battle, 3/4 of the battle. But there are also pieces that I thought I would mention. They are really trying to weed out in the process, and that's why schools really will not let anybody in without an interview. It's really important that they meet each person, see that they're going to fit. So as part of that, and through your stories, they're looking to find people that are going to be truly dedicated to their values. And first, of course, is ethics. The ethics is a cornerstone for all business schools, truly. Like, there's no leeway, any sort of sense of cheating, or I'm sure we have all heard about the admissions scandal this past week. Like, those people, there wouldn't be a question. They'd be removed immediately from the program. Any sort of misrepresentation on your application is a deal breaker. And of course, the last thing that these schools are looking for is somebody that's going to, ultimately be, the next Elizabeth Holmes. So it's really important that you show your integrity throughout the process. They're also really weeding out people who are soul searchers. And what I mean by this is, the truth is, once you get to business school, you are going to be soaking in insights about all different kinds of career paths and ideas that you never knew existed. And that's exactly what they want. They want that for you. So even if you go in positive you're going to be a consultant, no matter what, the reality is you're going to get there, and you might be working on a project with a classmate, and suddenly this great startup idea that was just meant to be part of a project has legs, and suddenly you're working for a startup, or who knows what you'll be exposed to. But for the purposes of your application, you can't sound like you have no idea what the future holds. You have to go in with a stake in the ground, that really clear sense of what you want to do after school, where the MBA fits into that picture. And it needs to fit into that picture. If the MBA isn't going to help you get there, then there's no point for them to accept you. But assuming you have a great path, you're here today, you're looking to be here tomorrow, and the MBA is your best next step, that's the perfect way to position yourself. Then once you're accepted, they don't care if you change your tune. The truth is that statistically, apparently 80 to 90% of applicants end up doing something different from what they wrote in their essays. And it's not that people are lying, it's just that you learn things. I mean, things like fintech didn't exist when I was applying to school, and impact investing is a thing that wasn't a thing back then. I mean, the future changes very rapidly, and especially in technology. So the point is, make sure that you really do sound like you have a clear plan, and of course, a little adaptability is great, it's totally fine, but you want to be pretty directed when you do the application itself. And then misguided / unrealistic is another bit of a deal breaker as it relates to the MBA admissions process. You really have to show that your goals are in fact attainable for you given your background, given your skills, given your trajectory. So if you say that let's say you're a physician today and you say that you want to go to private equity as your first job right after school, that doesn't show that you've fully done your homework into what it takes to be in private equity. And I am not a finance person. However, I do know enough at this point to know that they're going to wanting you to get some experience in finance, be it a tour of duty in investment banking and a strong finance background, leading into school, coming out of school, internships. So you have to understand what the path is. What the realistic path is for your goals, and you have to make a strong case that it is actually a fit for you. And for many people, it's not a problem, but a number of people are looking to switch careers, and it's very viable to do that. And there are lots of great tricks to prove it if you are totally making a switch, like a double switcher from somebody switching function and industry. There's a lot to prove to an admissions committee that you get it and that you can do this. But there are lots of great tricks that we have. Not tricks, but like real things you can do to make the admissions committee feel comfortable with your transition. And it's very important that you show that you have thought this through. Arrogance is another very negative quality. There's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. And again, adaptability is a really important piece of business school. They want to know that you're going to come in and learn and listen and adapt and become stronger every day and feel clueless every day because your classmates just dazzled you with some amazing new insight that you'd never heard before. So make sure that you really do show some humility throughout the process. Steamrollers is another interesting quality of people that they're weeding out. And I define this by just people that are willing to reach the top no matter who they have to step on to get there. And again, mentorship is a really positive quality, showing that you're the kind of person who picks people up along the way and would help other people, even if it takes a minute out of your day to do so. That's the kind of thing that they're looking for because, again, we each bring something special to the table when we get to school, and they want to know that you're going to add value to your classmates and be able to share your expertise and help them as needed. And I guess my last point is that a CEO is only as strong as his or her team around her. So, you can't be on an island leading. You have to have people that are bought in and strong people with expertise around you. And disingenuous is another quality. I know it sounds a bit like the unethical piece, but it's just a matter of being authentic to yourself. It's a little different in that I get this question every year from clients. Like, should I just tell them that my career goal is XYZ? I just feel like that's going to be a better story for me. And they really, really just want to hear what is your truth, as we say. Like, what you really want to do is probably going to be the story that's going to sound most passionate when you tell it. So just be honest with yourself. If it's unrealistic, then there's another whole conversation that needs to take place. But be yourself, be authentic. It's the best way to show them that you have something that you can bring to the table that will add value to the class. And then finally, declining levels of success is not really a very impressive characteristic. It's kind of like that old adage of, if you have a 3.5 GPA in college, and you had a 4.0 for freshman year and a 3.0 senior year, it's not as good as if it was the other way around. Better to continually grow and improve over the course of your life. And so continue to excel at work, continue to get those promotions, and continue to have people advocating for you at your organization, being able to write those strong recommendations and continue to take on those leadership projects. They really just want to see growth in your career, and the resume is one great way for them to gauge that, but of course your recommendations and your career trajectory will as well. All right, so when to apply. All right, I have a little example, and I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I don't want to get mired in the numbers. There's a point to be made at all of this, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along. So just food for thought. Let's say there's a business school, sample business school, and they have 1,000 spots to give away. Think for yourself, if I said to you, how many spots are available of that 1,000 for first round? And by the way, I apologize because I won't be able to see show of hands, but hopefully people have a sense of the rounds of admissions for at least a business school, but pretty commonly it's roughly 3 rounds. So you apply first round, you get a decision, you're done. Then there's another whole round, and there's no like rollover. Yes, you can be waitlisted, but first round is all encompassing. You get a decision, you are done. Or you can apply second round, and then you get a decision a few months later, and then you're done. And then there's a third round. So there's like multiple, exclusive buckets that you can choose to apply in. So first round is roughly September, October. How many of the 1,000 spots in sample business schools class do you think they reserve for a first round? Hopefully you've got your answer in your mind. I'm going to give you the answer right now. It's 1,000. Was anybody guessing 1,000? And does anybody know why? The reason is they're not holding back. The reality is they're probably not going to accept 100% of the class in that first round. They're just not. It doesn't typically happen. But they could. If they fall in love with 1,000 amazing people in first round, they could give all the spots away and then they're done. But in reality, let's say for sample business school that they actually found 600 people that they loved and they admitted 600. So using that same logic now, second round comes along. How many available spots do we think are available? How many spots do we think are available for second round? Again, using the same logic, if there were 1,000 to begin with, and they've already given away 600, then some quick math would say that there are 400 left. So again, the point is every spot in the class is available for the first, the round that's coming up. So they're not holding back. And now in this case, they've only got 400 left, still a lot, but fewer than originally. So in the scenario, let's say that they accept 300 students in second round. So then that would lead us to believe that in third round, there's only 100 left. So what is the whole point of this? The question is, when would be the best time to apply? And if you're looking at the numbers and thinking about how many spots in the class are available and how many people are admitted roughly, you might be inclined to say first round is a pretty good place to apply. And the reality is that actually second round too is a pretty darn good place to apply. There's nothing wrong with second round. And again, these are fake numbers, but just to give you a sense of a scenario here. But it's really most likely a little bit closer, roughly. Yeah, there'll be more people admitted second round probably and closer to the first round numbers. But I wanted you to see some easy enough math to see that every spot in the class is available for first round. Very few spots are left for third round. And so you don't really want to be applying third round. So this all said, it is much better to be outstanding as an applicant in the second round than mediocre in the first round. And what can make you mediocre? A mediocre GMAT or GRE score, a rushed application that wasn't really thoughtful and you didn't have a chance to really do homework about the school and you just sort of filled in a generic set of answers, or you haven't really thought through your story or what you're about or your goals and just kind of a mishmash. All those things could be mediocre. So it's really important to have all your ducks in a row. And then if all is equal, then go first round. But if you need that second round to get the best application in their hands, and again, even if that just means a better GMAT score, because you know that you left points on the table and you just need one more shot to try to get them, and then definitely take that time, get your best score in their hands, because you only get that one shot to submit your application. Okay, just a quick drop more. All right, recommendations. We talked about those briefly. How do you know who's the right person? Well, first and foremost, they need to think you walk on water. They are huge fans of yours, and they are willing to write about it. That is ultimately the bottom line criteria. But also very important is that they know you really, really well, like not the leader of your company that you see once every 3 weeks in the hallway, but they think you're a great person. It's not that. They have to work intimately with you and be able to illustrate their experience with very specific anecdotes and examples. You ideally need to have reported to them in some capacity, and it doesn't have to be formal reporting structure. There are so many times when people aren't in that kind of a position that they don't, maybe they lead their own company or whatever, but they don't have to literally be your boss, but some sort of manager of a team that you were on, or the lead of a project that you were part of, or the chair of a committee that was a volunteer work you did, but somebody that's in a position to judge you. Other good examples are clients, perhaps, depending on your situation. And of course, the ideal is your manager, your most recent manager, if that's possible for you. But there are many ways around that if it's not. And then the other key is that it's somebody that will actually write it themselves. You are not allowed to write your own recommendations. It is totally against the code of ethics for your schools. There's all sorts of fun plagiarism software and software that they use to see metadata in the applications. And if your name is in the metadata of a Word doc that you submitted as your recommendation and they see that, you are out. Like, it's a no tolerance policy on anything ethical. So it's not worth it. And then the other reason it's not worth it is because if you've done your job well, you've already told them everything about you that you want them to know in your essays, in your resume. So what left do you have to say in your own recommendations anyway? And it'll be in your same voice. So there's so many reasons why it needs to really be from them. They actually do a much better job bragging about you than you do yourself. And they have to be somebody that reliably will submit by the deadline. So the best way to make sure that they do get that done well is to give them some resources to make their job as easy as possible. Give them a list of your deadlines. You certainly want to give them fake deadlines, not the real deadline, but like 5 days earlier maybe, but just someday that you're positive that there's no chance if they have the flu they're going to miss. Make sure they get your resume, a sense of your story, your goals, maybe thought starters for some of the questions, like maybe a reminder of some of the interesting things you guys worked on together and you think might make a good example. And if you're applying to a lot of schools, then it's better to have a number of different recommenders if you've got lots of choices than to just give 1 or 2 recommenders a ton of applications and overwhelm them. So if you need to make that choice and you want to apply to 10 schools in round 1, which sounds really hard to do, but you may want to maybe divide and conquer a little bit, and that's perfectly fine. Just give them lots of advance notice. It's your project to manage. If they don't submit it, it's your bottom line, so you have to stay on top of it, and then just show them tons and tons of gratitude because it is a lot of work, but that's really all it takes to get the best recommendation submitted. Okay, I think this is my last little section for you, which is just some common applicant mistakes that are every year seen and reported from admissions directors. So first is one that we talked about, which is that they're looking for team players. And so, for somebody that's entire application is all about, I did this, I did that, and I'm single-handedly responsible for every success that my group has ever had, then that's a negative trait. Now, on the flip side, saying we, because you're so collaborative and team-oriented that you never take credit for your own success is also a mistake. You have to have a healthy balance between advocating for yourself and showing off your unique contributions and, being completely selfish on an island, where you're the only one that gets credit. Another mistake is only talking about work because they really, 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 really want to get to know you as a person. And that means extracurricular stuff. That means personal stuff. That means culture. That means everything that makes you the type of person you are, all the influences that are meaningful to you. So make sure that you give a healthy balance, even if it's just a personal section in your resume, just make sure that they get a sense of who you are outside of work. Because, and again, business school specifically is a lot about the stuff you don't, like it's a lot of business school is about the part of business school that's not the classroom and the team projects. It's about the networking happy hours and the global studies activities and everything in between. It's the food and wine society. It's all the little, whether it's professional clubs or social clubs, they want you to get to know your classmates because the whole point of going to business school, well, one of the many points is to leave with an amazing network of people that you then can grow from for the rest of your life, truly. And so they want to know that you're going to be active and engaged as a student. Being really cliche about your response is also an applicant mistake, like, your greatest weakness in an interview question, like your greatest weakness is you're too much of a perfectionist, like, just go deep, like peel back a few layers of the onion and let them see who you are. TMI, meaning too much information, is certainly a mistake. Truly, admissions directors have reported back seeing essays and stories and interview responses dealing with things that were everything from drinking to sexual things. It's just inappropriate. If you wouldn't want the CEO of your future company to hear these things, then certainly your admissions officers should hear them as well. So just use your judgment. Emotional intelligence is important. The wrong school typo is a big one. It's pretty easy to, retrofit certain pieces of content from one school to another, especially your whole, why you want your degree program essay, like why are you here, your statement of purpose, your why I want my MBA essay, my why I'm here at law school, applying to law school essay. Be sure that you do tailor it to each individual school, and certainly get at least a couple of people to read the application and make sure that you have not made any typos. Okay, I'll go quickly for these next few because we kind of covered them. The failure that's really an accomplishment is actually the cliche response that was the example that I gave you. But again, be real. Don't miss details of the entire question. Like if there's a two-part question, they really genuinely want you to answer both parts. What matters most and why? You better get that why in there. Like it's very important. Try to stay close to the word limit. If you go over, then it shows you can't follow directions. And if you go way under, it shows you don't have anything to say. And don't underestimate your competition. Like I've seen so many people who, especially with a GMAT, like, is this good enough? What's the lowest score I kind of need to get it? Is that the way you go into a really competitive process? Is what's the bare minimum that I need to maybe impress them? It's, your best score is the very, very best score you can humanly get within your intellectual and physical ability. That's the score you should submit. Like it's not about a hurdle, it's about being the best. Like everybody has got their A game, especially for these top schools. So be sure to leave nothing on the table. And then, of course, the few that we've now already mentioned, illogical career goals is a definite mistake. If they can't help you get there, they're not going to accept you. An impersonal recommendation from a really impressive sounding person is not a good one. And then failing to show passion for their school. They want to know, especially a school with a small community or in a more rural area, like they want to show that you get them, and you want to be part of their community, and you understand the nuances about what makes that school special. So that's, I think, the gist of my presentation up front, and I welcome the opportunity to answer questions. Of course, we're going to do Q&A now and from Brett, but down the road, this is my information. We'll make sure you have it too if the slides move. But the point is, don't hesitate to call me after the fact or reach out or email if you have any questions or need advice. But thank you for listening. So. Brett, so by the way, technical question, as we say in business school, should I get out of this screen now and put on the big video?
Yeah, you should be able to click stop sharing somewhere.
Okay, I will do that. Pause share. How about that? Stop share.
That's it. Perfect.
Okay, done. Thank you.
Awesome, and we can put up some more of your contact information, or you can even type it in the chat area maybe. So definitely appreciate that. And you covered a lot of bases, but what I was thinking we can do now is I have a few more questions that some students have submitted, and just some questions that I know some of my previous students have had, and maybe some of the attendees today have. So I'll just ask you some of those, and then we'll open it up to everybody. So one of the things that comes to mind, obviously, it's ideal if all of these ducks are already in a row and you have strong recommendations and a strong GMAT score and strong GPA, but there are some things like your undergraduate record it's kind of over. Like you don't have much control over that. And what if, for example, you don't have a great GMAT score, and maybe you've tried and take my class if you want to improve your GMAT score, but let's say your GMAT score just isn't quite where you know it should be for one of your target schools. Do you have any tips on how a candidate can make up for something that's lacking, kind of a hole in their application, whether it's a low GMAT score, whether it's a poor undergraduate record? How can somebody make up for a hole in their application?
Okay, great question. Yeah, I mean, my first answer was going to be call a good tutor to help you, and it doesn't have to even be a tutor. It could be whatever works for you, even if it's independent study. But certainly, if you're hitting a wall, then it's good to shake up your methodology and consider a different perspective, a different approach, a different person, a different book, whatever. But yeah, I mean, my first answer, especially as it relates to a test score, is take it again and don't give up. But if you truly plateaued and I think one of the best ways to know that you plateaued is maybe you've tried a couple of different approaches and you have, you're not getting extra points even at home. Like if you're like maxed out at home and you don't feel like it's a matter of delivering on test day, because sometimes it is that. And I have an idea for that too. Actually, I know two people that do test anxiety work, and sometimes it's a whole test anxiety issue, and if that's it, there's actually a really great set of fixes for that. But if you're maxed out of your academic and intellectual capabilities, then here are a few ideas. and if it's a low GPA or something along these lines, then I guess the key is to just arm yourself with as many successful data points that you can to make up for it. So but as it relates to test prep, the first thing I would say is if you haven't done this, try the other tests. It's the nice thing about at least business school is that you can take the GMAT or the GRE, and sometimes you can do much better on one versus the other. Like it may be more well suited for you. Maybe you're a vocab rock star, and you can accumulate tons and tons of points in the GRE format of verbal, or maybe the data analytics section is more your speed in the GRE. So definitely try the other test and see if you fare better. And I've had a number of people submit a okay score for one and then submit the other test too. And even if their other test didn't get that much higher, just that effort that you put in to improve is really, really valued. So do everything you can to make sure that they see you've exhausted the opportunity. Now, after you've done that, consider your academic history, your career path. Is it needed? Like if you are just struggling on the test, but let's say it's a GMAT situation again, but your GPA is okay, or it's great, and you're an investment banker, I'm just making this up, and it's an issue primarily of the quantitative section on your exam, but you're a banker and every single day you're crunching numbers and modeling or any other sort of analytical job, like really data heavy job. Then maybe you've taken a whole bunch of finance classes and or accounting classes or statistics classes or mathematics in college and did really well there. So if you've proven in a number of different ways that you have the background to thrive in a quantitatively rigorous environment, then you could just let it go and maybe you could talk about it in the optional essay if needed. But it definitely does depend on your background, and if it's just one outlier data point, then you should be okay. But if not, then if you want, you can also take a class, like a quantitative class. You can take finance, accounting, HBX core, or some of the other continuing education classes that are offered at a number of the top business schools. But just any sort of accredited institution where you can get an A and show them that you can accomplish these that you can succeed in that kind of an academic curriculum is another great thing you can do. And another option too is to take on some sort of a quantitative project. I know it sounds kind of weird, and it's not as good as submitting a strong score, but if you are confident that you can handle the academic rigors of the program and you're just missing one data point, then prove it in another way. So if it's not a class, maybe it's a project that is out of your scope of daily work that you have an opportunity, be it in your company or in your volunteer work or community work, to show off those skills. Do it and then write about it in the optional essay. I think the key is just to put in full effort. If you have a weakness or a weaker area, show that you've learned that, you're self-aware, and that you're doing everything you can to address it.
Cool. And you mentioned possibly trying the GRE instead. More and more business schools are accepting the GRE. Are admissions officers really indifferent between the GMAT and GRE?
For the most part, yes. It's just really important to read that school's website and or other materials and just make sure that they aren't explicitly telling you that they have a preference. Most of them really don't, though, nowadays. And the reason is they're trying to get more diverse candidates to apply. So anybody pursuing a joint degree is going to benefit more from the GRE rather than forcing that poor person to take both tests. So they're really trying to encourage people who maybe were gung-ho for a master's of public health, but also thought maybe adding on the MBA would be appealing to them. They don't want them to be dissuaded by the fact that they have to take a GMAT. So anyway, so in conclusion, it's definitely not, if they say they welcome it, they mean it. The key is to just take the test you're going to do better on. So I think if all things are equal, common mindset is, if all things are equal and you could pick one, it can't hurt by taking the GMAT because it's the test that was designed for only business school. There's no other purpose for the GMAT in the entire universe than to help people get into business school. So, it's definitely the test that was designed for business school. But if you are going to do better on the GRE, you've already taken the GRE, or you're a joint degree candidate that already, can use that for other programs, or maybe you're applying to multiple kind of programs, then it's definitely okay.
Cool. And is there an ideal number of schools to apply to? And I guess more generally, what are some guidelines that students can use to figure out which schools to apply to in the first place?
Okay, well, in terms of the number of schools, and this is, again, specific to business schools because of the, I mean, this would apply to other schools too, but business schools are really, really, it's an exhaustive process to apply, and it's a lot of work. Again, I wrote 31 essays to apply to school. At least you don't have to do that, but you have to write a lot of essays. Your recommenders have to do a lot of work. So it's hard to apply to 20 schools. You can apply sometimes to 20 other kinds of programs and just submit common applications. There's just not that kind of a thing in business school. So that said, you are limited by time, and you have to get to know the schools really well to impress them. So I always recommend at least 4 to 6 for any sort of typical student. 2 that maybe are more of a reach, 2 that are a little safer, but not schools that you wouldn't be excited to go to, and then maybe 2 or 4 in the middle. And if you have a weaker area that you think might be a bit of a red flag, again, maybe like a really low test score or whatever it might be, or then add some extra schools. Put some irons in the fire and make sure that you have enough options out there. I mean, it's just option value. It's the first thing we learn in business school. Option value is a good thing. And by the time the program is over, the admissions process is over, you want to have options. Even one great option is a great option. And I've had people, it's just, you never know what that option is going to be. It's crazy to think about, but I've had a couple people that I know that were not accepted to the majority of their schools, but they were accepted to Kellogg, or like this one really great school, and that was like the only school that they got into, or some weird thing. And sometimes it's just fit. Like you want to be a Chicago booth quantitative person deep in your heart. You really wish you were that financy person that is going to really impress Columbia and talk all about the heartland of being in the financial capital of the world. And the reality is that just fit-wise, a school like Kellogg really feels like you're a Kellogg person, because all you want to do is work with other people, help other people. And I'm just saying schools can sometimes define fit for you, even if you don't see it yourself. And it's amazing how many times people get into schools that are very like-minded. Like, there's some schools that I named Kellogg as a very collaborative, team-oriented school, but so is Tufts, so is Duke. There are so many like that, UCLA. And I see people getting into those schools together very often. And people who do get into more quantitative schools and are more quantitatively oriented will tend to sometimes get into, the Chicagos and the Whartons and the MITs, together. So schools can sometimes read that from you, even if you can. But how you choose, I think the most important thing to think about is fit. And I know it's easy to look at the rankings, and I'm a big fan of taking the rankings and using it as a starting point to populate your list, but there are a lot of rankings out there. They all measure different things, and if you have any sort of specialization, then there's US News has a great ranking of business schools by specialization. That could be a great resource for you. And you may not have realized that Carnegie Mellon is a phenomenal program and something that is exactly what you want to do. So it's really important to, start with some of the basic things like, if a big school is your jam, then definitely focus on big schools. If you want small and intimate, then definitely just start there. Or geographic location is important. If some people want to be in a big city, some people don't. All of those kinds of things are really valid. I mean, you have to narrow down somehow, but then do look at the culture of the school. Again, like, are you somebody that loves working in teams? Are you somebody that doesn't love working in teams? Like, you have to think about those kinds of things, and how much, like, case method. If you want a really case method heavy school, there are those for you. And if you don't want that and you want a little more of a hybrid, then there's that. So, but then also really do pay attention to the curriculum and make sure that you are considering whether a school has a particular strength that's going to be a great fit for you, like healthcare. There's some schools that have phenomenal healthcare programs, and some of them are formal programs, and others are just concentrations that you can take, or just classes that are phenomenal because of the faculty that's there. So really do try to pick out the schools that are going to be most effective to help you achieve your goals beyond what is on a ranking, because that can change tomorrow.
Okay, cool. And I guess kind of my final question for you before we open it up to everybody else is, I get a lot of inquiries from non-US students. And I guess the question would be, Are admissions officers looking for anything different, or are there different standards for international students? And when I say that, that's from the context of me being here in the U.S. So non-U.S. students applying to U.S. business schools as compared to U.S. candidates. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it's a great question. I mean, the reality is kind of no. I mean, there's a bare minimum of criteria that it doesn't matter, who you are, you have to be fluent in English, and you have to have a beautiful working knowledge and ability in the English language. You have to be able to handle the quantitative and analytical rigors of the program, and which is why they give you the GRE or the GMAT, because they want to be able to measure apples to oranges to pears. So they have to give you some way to show that no matter what your background was, you're able to thrive. So you have to be able to show that you can contribute to the program, that you have something to offer, that you meet the qualities that I mentioned, the leadership qualities and the community qualities and the values. So all of those are going to be demanded of anybody that has a shot at the school. I think where there may be some flexibility is if let's say you're from a really underrepresented region, and so like you're from the Congo, then will they give you a little bit of flexibility, perhaps on assuming you have a great score, but maybe it's not as high as some of the higher scores in the applicant pool. Is there a little flexibility because you bring something amazingly unique to the class? Sure, they reserve that right, but they can do that for anybody. So that's the thing, maybe you're from an underrepresented region, maybe you're from an underrepresented industry in the United States, and that's the unique thing you bring to the table, or whatever it is that you bring to your to the profile. You want to figure out how you were differentiated. So if your primary points of differentiation are your is where you're from, is your cultural background, is your international experience, then wonderful. And sure, that could help to overcome perhaps a slightly lower GPA or some other aspect of your profile that might be less strong, but that does work for anything. And then it works in reverse, like perhaps you maybe have one aspect of your profile that's a dime a dozen, like you're just another in your mind, like another consultant from New York City, that's American, but you have some outstanding aspect of your extracurricular work where your scores are amazing and be above and beyond. Like any little aspect of your profile that's unique and will help them consider you a standout is going to work in your favor. But at the minimum, you're never going to really have a great shot with a 500 GMAT out of 800, even if you're from even if you're the first applicant they've ever seen from country X.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, questions are coming in, so let's go ahead and turn to those. And at some point, maybe you guys can come off chat and actually ask her, but some of you have already submitted, so I'll just kind of read some of these questions. Calvin asked a question privately, and then Trupti kind of asked a similar question. So here's the question: work experience. Business schools tend to look for 2 years full-time work experience. He says, I don't quite have 2 full-time years, but I have like 3+ years of part-time experience and internships and things like that. How do I deal with that? Is that acceptable? Do I actually need the 2 full years? And Trupti said, okay, no, different question from her. So I guess go ahead and answer Calvin's first.
Okay. Well, first I just want to address that they're looking for 2 years thing, because that's not even really true per se. I think 2 years is probably a minimum that really, I guess somebody could go with 1 year of experience, but let's say 2 years is kind of the bare minimum that you might have a shot. But it's much more typical that you'll find people coming in with a little bit more experience in that, a common tour of duty at a consulting firm or a bank would be 3 years, and a lot of analyst programs are 3 years. But the more experience you have, to an extent, the more experience you have, the better, because it's just more insight and experience that you can bring to your class. So that said, if it's part-time versus not, I guess it's going to be an individual assessment of your profile, because would it be better if you did have some solid years of work experience at 1 or 2 or however many organizations, 3 organizations, that you can show a trajectory of growth and that you really have great insights to bring to the table. I mean, that would be the ideal, but without knowing the nature of your part-time work, I guess I can't say for sure. And there's some people that are coming from completely unique backgrounds. People are coming from the military and they've never worked in a, business environment before, but they bring a lot of life experience to the table. So, and I know this comes up a lot when people have another master's degree. Like they may have gone to school and so they weren't, maybe they're 28, but they have only got a few years of work experience. So how does that get measured? So every individual is assessed individually, and each profile would be unique in the way that you would be considered. But I would definitely consider that they really do want people who are going to come to this program with something to add. Every business school is a very participation-oriented program. So they're wanting people to raise hands, disagree, agree, share insights. Oh yeah, well, we did that at my organization, this is how we tackled that. And especially in your teams, every teammate is supposed to bring something to that team. So the less experience you have, the less value you'll gain a ton from the program, but you'll have a lot less value to add. So it could be a little risky.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what you said applies to Trupti's question, which actually was relevant. She asks, what if there's a gap in work right before applying? Maybe somebody took a couple years off to have a child, or you just haven't been working recently and now you're ready to apply. Are there any other recommendations on how to handle that?
Well, I suppose if there's nothing you can do about it, and it's like, no matter what, I'm applying now and I've been out of the workforce and this is the only time and they just are going to have to love me for who I am, then I suppose I would just advise that person to explain the nature of their situation in the optional essay and or the main essay, depending on the question. But certainly the optional essay is a place for them to understand anything that you might want them to know about your choices and or experience. So if you come to the table with great experience and then you took some time off for whatever it is, no one can take that experience away from you. And so it shouldn't technically prevent you from being able to then successfully apply to school. That said, there is still that little bit of, they're looking for people to show continued growth. So it's not the perfect timing to take time out and then apply, because you have technically stopped that professional growth. And it would be, I guess, ideal if you could show how you've continued to grow somehow during that time, even if it wasn't in a full-time position. And a lot of people are out of work because just life. So, and I'm working with somebody now who life. And it's been a year since she was able to get something, but man, she has been busy. She's been like actively involved with organizations, growing meetings. She's volunteering to help different entrepreneurs with projects. And so she's just she's finding the most scrappy ways to be involved with things, to just show how she spent this time. That's part of what they're going to want to know, is how you spent the time. And families, that's a beautiful way to spend the time. And you may not have to say anything more than that, but they're going to just evaluate you for what you bring, I suppose. And there's no real magic answer.
Okay, cool. And just to give everybody a heads up, we're obviously coming up on the top of the hour. We'll continue to ask questions. I think Hillary is going to be gracious enough to stick around a little bit longer. So if you need to go at the top of the hour, that's great. But I know some of you have asked questions that we haven't answered yet. So feel free to stick around as long as we're here answering the questions. Another question has to do with submitting multiple GMAT or GRE scores. If you submit multiple GMAT scores, do they just take your best one? Should you only send your best one? Likewise with the GRE, if you take it more than once, do they mix and match your best quant, your best verbal? How do they evaluate when you submit multiple scores?
Well, you have to read, first and foremost, you have to read each school's criteria on the website. And if the school says they're willing to do the mix and match, then they will. However, it's not common. Typically the best score is, and it's self-reported usually for the application. So some schools may say, how many times have you taken it? Please share all your scores here on the application. Others will say, what is your best score? Self-report your best score. And then they expect as a follow-up, you will submit the official report. And sometimes you don't even have to submit the official report until you're accepted, but ultimately you're going to need that official report. But so anyway, so certainly make sure you're clear about the rules of each school. But yeah, it's most common that you have to kind of pick your best score, and if you have a higher verbal on one and a higher quant on the other, you have a tough choice to make. But that's how. And there was a second part, I think, to your question. Did I get?
No, I think that answers it for that one. Drew.
Yeah. Oh, I think, you know what? I'm sorry. There was one piece though that about like how it looks to submit multiple scores, I think was part of that too. And I did want to say that if you have an opportunity to grow, be it GMAT, GRE score, or any other aspect of your profile, and you are taking active steps to improve in that area, to get the best score in their hands, they love that. And that's the best thing that you can do for yourself in that situation. There is a point where you do need to show professional maturity and cut it. Like, they don't want you to take it 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, like that's too many. Because there are other more important aspects of the application, and frankly, it shouldn't take you that many times to get a great score. Like, I mean, if you're doing it right at some point 4 times, if you haven't gotten the score, it's not meant to be. So do your best. There's no rule that says you have to even take it more than once. Like, I did one and done. I was done. I prepped really hard. I took it when I was ready, and then I never had to see the test again. So don't go in there thinking, I'm gonna, plan to take it a bunch of times. But they love seeing that you've made the effort, or like GRE, same thing. I mean, if your best score is on the GRE, but you've already taken a bunch of GMATs, then let them see that you put in that effort, and don't be shy about it, but just use your judgment on how many times you're going to torture yourself and show them that you're mature enough to know when it's time to move on.
Okay. So this next question follows on that and may open up a little bit of a conversation about the integrated reasoning score on the GMAT. How important is that score? And Drew's asking, on his second attempt, he got a really great, really high aggregate, GMAT score, verbal quant, but a lower IR score. And on a previous attempt, he got a solid IR score, but not as good of a total score. So should he send both of those?
Well, so and then the send thing is kind of confusing, because there is a score report, and unless you've canceled it, it'll be on your report. So they'll see what you've taken unless you've canceled it. I guess the key is which one you cite as your best. So like if the school says, what's your GMAT, like what's your highest GMAT, then you report that on the application, you're done, you apply. But once you send in the report, they will see what you've taken. So you're kind of good to go. And I personally don't see any downside for them to see your past scores, unless it's just a total disaster and you just would never want them to know that you even took it. But I still think, they don't know if you were taking it as a practice. So some people take the real thing as a practice, which I think is silly, but because it's, you're kind of wasting that opportunity. But as long as the score that you submit is a great score, they're happy, because that's really all they want out of you, is to get a great score and to prove to them that you can do it, you can do it and thrive in a classroom and help their averages as it comes to ratings time. But IR, I mean, gosh, if your score is great on the GMAT overall, don't worry about it. I mean, the reason it looks really bad is if somebody just puts in no effort. You want every single touch point with these schools to be perfection. And so if you're the kind of person that slept through the essay section and just so that you can get the greatest possible verbal and quant score, it's not going to be very impressive. But if you truly put in a good showing and it's decent, but it's kind of pulling you down, I think that'll be forgivable. But yeah, you just don't want to show them that you were being lazy or didn't put in any effort, because the part of the challenge is to tackle each part of the application. Tackle each part of the test. Right. So everybody else is studying.
And the application too. So.
But it's largely not that important they're still trying to figure out all the different ways that they can use IR, and it's not quite the most important thing.
Okay, cool. Switching gears, any tips on the statement of purpose, and would you approach it like a cover letter for a job?
Well, it's funny. I guess it really depends on the actual wording of the question and or for what program. But if they, there's this, MIT Business School has an actual essay that says, write us a cover letter for why you want to be applying to our program. And they give you some guidelines, and they're it can't be more than 400 words. But if a school is statement of purpose, 500 words, go, then I wouldn't probably do that like a cover letter, because that would be one really wordy cover letter. So I'm inclined regardless to say no, but it's really important to read the question, and it's really trust that their prompts are exactly what they're looking to see. So if they say, like, statement of purpose, please tell us why you want to be here, then I would really write it like an essay, a story where you're the protagonist and you're excited about your own reason for applying to the school, and you're kind of setting the stage with context and helping them understand a little bit about your your backstory and how you've come to this point today, and what brings you to this moment where you want to go off and do these new things, and not new things, but just take this next chapter in your career. And I certainly would also make sure that you're including the impact you want to make, and give them a sense that if they were to accept you and enable you to be part of the program, that you would then use that in some really meaningful way and make them proud that you would be an alum. But it's kind of hard to answer without knowing exactly what program you're talking about, but what are the parameters for the essay. But just know that it should really, if they're asking for an essay, then tell your story, and make sure they have a sense of where this all came from. A lot of times people will be like, here's what I want to do, and it's a lot more believable when you give a little bit of evidence. And I always say, show me, don't tell me. So the best way to show me that something is your next best step is to kind of paint a picture of you living in the world, seeing some opportunity for you to do something or experience something and wanting to make a difference, and just telling that story and giving them evidence that this is why this is your best next step in your journey, and why they're the best program for you to do that.
Great. Nathan asks, is the approach at all different when applying for an executive MBA versus a standard 2-year MBA versus a doctoral program?
Great question. Well, so doctoral program, I guess, would be probably in a different topic. So I'll just maybe focus on with the MBAs, apples to apples. The approach is actually quite similar in a lot of ways. It's more like the criteria are different that they're assessing. It's the same values, and it's the same school, and it's they care about the things they care about, but they're going to be looking for somebody applying to an executive program to come with that much more experience and that much more management experience and leadership experience, and want to do more professionally mature things with it. So they're going to be, it's similar criteria, but they're going to have different expectations for an executive who's 10 plus years into his or her career versus someone who's just, 3-4 years out of college now wanting to come, to this next chapter. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think. The other thing is that resume could be longer. Like for a resume in a full-time MBA program, it really should be on one page unless you're very, very, very special. You're supposed to have roughly 1-page resume for every 10 years of experience. So it could be more appropriate for an executive to have a longer resume and have a longer group of accomplishments. And, maybe their activities are going to be a little bit different because perhaps they're later and they're in a different life stage. So I think, they'll be assessing you in that life stage. Yeah, and also, I guess there are some executive programs that don't require a standardized test, but plenty do, but some of them have their own kind of test options. So you can look into that too. I know a few people that were trying to find an opportunity that didn't require them to take the GMAT at, age 35, and so it's worth exploring that too, and what the admissions criteria are.
Cool. Okay. Angie's asking about the interview process, which we haven't really talked about yet. So what's the process like, and is it like applying for a job? And as a caveat, she's actually applying for a master's in counseling, so that may or may not be the same as an MBA one. Tackle whichever aspect you want there, but the interview process.
Great, that's a great question. And admittedly, I'm like offline. I have some friends that have been through it. I'm very happy to follow up and try to ask them for a little bit more specialized insight into the counseling interview. But certainly for business school, and I've got to believe, for just about every program, it actually is quite similar to what you would expect. When I prepare people for business school interviews, I always say, interview 101, what you already know. And then, it's like the firm, but, mature handshake and the eye contact and the smile and the poise and everything that you would expect. Yet, certainly for business school, and I've got to believe for any company and any program that really wants to see if you should be a part of it, it's going to be a lot about fit. So, and they're going to ask you for sure to answer certain pointed questions. A lot of times, some schools are very into what we call behavioral questions, like tell me a time when you did X, tell me a time when you saw Y, how did you handle, tell me a time. They're really into those. A lot of others are like, what are your philosophies on, leadership, or hey, I see you were really interested in cooking in your application. Tell me more. What's your favorite thing to cook? Or, maybe digging into your trends in your industry and testing to see if you really are the expert that you say you are in your industry. Some schools are really tough in their style, a little bit like dig, and others are like conversation, just, tell us who you are. So it's definitely and it's well documented for the different schools, again, at least for business school, but certainly I've got to believe for others, you can get a sense of their style, like who you're going to be meeting with. Sometimes it's a admissions officer, sometimes it's a student, sometimes it's an alum. Is it a long interview? Is it an hour? Is it half an hour? Is it, two people or one person? And, what is the tone and style? So a lot of that information is readily available. And sometimes for an interview, they've read your application, like Harvard Business School is notorious. They've read your application, and they were the one I was thinking of when I was talking about like trends in your industry. And they're like, what's your favorite, tell me a CEO that you value in your field, and what about that startup idea? And, they'll check, but they're not trying to be difficult. They want to engage you in conversation and see how you discuss some of the things that you're telling them that really matter to you. So, and others are much, much more lighthearted. But all of them are looking for fit. They're trying to see if you are who you say you are in your application, and if you can speak intelligently about your own story, and if you're going to be likable and you are going to play nicely in the sandbox, and if you did actually write your own application, or you had somebody who speaks English, translate it for you, and you actually have terrible fluency in the language. So those are all things that are going to matter. But yeah, if you think of it a lot like what you would want an employer to consider as they were trying to figure out if you could add value to their company, the preparation would be, quite similar.
Awesome. A few more questions. Is the selection process any different when applying to a state university versus a private university?
I'm just thinking, again, like business school wise, I would say no. I guess I can't speak for every program and every graduate program at every type of university and school, but no, it's really comes down to what that particular program values and what they're measuring in that interview. And again, it's quite widely available, but there's a lot of published information, and now with social media, there's wikis, and I know, especially like in the business school world, there's an organization, there's a website called ClearAdmit, and they do a lot of wonderful publications, and but then there's like GMAT Club and Beat the GMAT, and you can find all sorts of self-reported interview questions and interview recaps, and actually ClearAdmit writes interview guides that I think are excellent, and they give you all sorts of intel so that when you go in there, what kind of a process. So maybe it's a UC school, like a University of California school, or a private school, but whichever one it is, they're going to have their approach, and they're going to value the things that they're going to value in that interview process. And I definitely suggest doing the research to find out what each school is going to be, but I don't see personally any specific trends between the state versus private institutions. It's more like school by school by school, and what matters to them in that process.
Cool. Okay. Quick question about financial aid. Is it need-based or merit-based for business school? And should a candidate bring it up during the application process, or just wait until after he or she has already been accepted? So I'm happy to share. I have a little write-up that I did for our clients, because people do ask a lot about that, and there's so much information online too, like for a particular school. I definitely recommend scouring each school's own website for their directions on aid, but there is definitely merit-based aid, fellowships, scholarships. There's so much money to be offered, and you can, if you're a part of a particular industry group or a minority group or a cultural group, there's sometimes particular funds that you can go after. So really check for each school what they offer, and apply for everything you can. But there's definitely need-based funding out there, and which, what each school offers is, I guess, going to be specific to that school, but it's kind of a standard fare of like,
offerings that you would expect for those that are not in a financial position to pay outright for their education. But what is really important to know is that the sooner, if you're looking for funding, you got to apply on the earlier side, because if you're going to apply round 3, not only are most of the spots in the class gone, but also, you know, a lot of that money has already been allocated. So be really clear for yourself about what each school's deadlines are. And some of them will say, like, you know, international students have to apply round 1 for something or other that they're looking for. So depending on, you know, be it funding or visas, like, be really deliberate about when you apply, and aware that you may have to meet certain hurdles. But in terms of bringing it up, like, it doesn't tend to be a conversation. I mean, it definitely wouldn't, like, ask during an interview about it. It's just in the application process, you will see clearly what you need to do to request funding and apply for the different sources of funding that you are eligible for. And even if you are not remotely in need, if you have stellar academic profile, tremendous GPA, tremendous GRE, GMAT, you may very well get offered merit dollars even if you didn't want it or apply for it. I mean, that happens to my clients every year. They get thrown money from a school that just was so impressed by them. It's just they're trying to get you. So there's tons of merit-based money out there, some of which you don't even have to ask for, and it will come with your offer. So again, get the best score you can on those tests, because it can really be a nice surprise and help you make a tough decision.
Awesome. Cool. We have one final question, but before I prompt you with it, I just want to thank you, obviously, for being on. And guys, I'm going to post a link to Shine's contact page. So if you have any final questions, you can reach out to her there. And I highly encourage you guys to reach out to her if you want help actually doing all of this stuff. I mean, there's a lot here, whether you want an extra set of eyeballs on your essays, your resume, prepping you for interviews. I've sent a lot of my former students Hillary's way, and she has taken great care of them, helped them get accepted to the top schools. So I know she would take great care of you guys as well, if it's a good fit, if it makes sense, some MBA admissions consulting. So highly encourage you to reach out to Hillary after we're done here.
I may send you right back to Brett if your GMAT score here isn't good enough. So it works really both ways. But
exactly. We'll
back at you, Brett. Right. Thank you.
Final question from Calvin, and I've actually never really heard this one before. He's reapplying to a school that had previously rejected him. What should he mention in that? Should he just acknowledge the elephant in the room? Will they already see that? How should he talk in his essays about what he think went wrong the first time, what he's learned? How should he handle that situation?
Wow, great question. Well, good for you for having perseverance. They do really, really appreciate that. And I guess I can advise a little better depending on what it is. You know, sometimes there is an elephant, and that's why that's very likely perhaps why you weren't accepted. But a lot of times it's just a whole host of factors and tough decisions, and there's nothing really to say other than just focusing on presenting your best, putting your best foot forward in the new application process. But that said, for sure, no matter what, whether they ask it explicitly, which some schools will, like, hey, you're a reapplicant, tell us, what's changed. So whether they ask or don't ask, they're going to want to see growth. And so a lot of times people say, well, why don't I just toss in an application round 3 if I don't get in? I'll turn around and apply round 1. Well, don't do that, because if somebody has applied, let's say round 3, and 6 months later, if that, they're ready to apply again round 1, not much has changed in their life. And they didn't, even if you were only rejected based on one little minor thing, like, I don't know, I mean, just bad luck, or you applied too late or whatever it was, not bad luck, but like you applied too late and that was part of it. There just weren't enough spots and you were in a competitive applicant pool that year. Now, as a reapplicant, they have a whole new set of standards that they're looking at you through. Like, no matter what you were rejected based on last time, they want to see growth. So, and it's got to be a multi-layered, aspect of growth. Like, it can't just be like, I retook my GMAT, are you happy? No, it's got to be like, and here's how I grew in my professional life, and here's how I, things I experienced in the world, or, and so on and so on. Like, they want to see that you've taken a step back and reflected on why you may have not been accepted. And if there was anything to address, you've addressed it. You're not making, you're not making excuses. You're not apologetic. You're just being better, and you're just showing them your new better self. So sometimes it's it's worth writing the answer to that, like how have you grown in that year, depending on the school and the format of the application. Other times they just want to see it. And like if it's Harvard, it's a whole big essay. You're supposed to, or Stanford, like what matters most to you and why. I mean, if you send the same answer, it's not going to show growth. Like, hopefully you've rethought everything and you present a new front to that school. So I do want to say to anybody reapplying that, it's worth, like, don't just turn around and submit a new application because, it's like do the same thing, expecting different results. Insanity, so it applies to business school too. Like you have to have grown, and I've seen people be really successful when they actually put the application process down for a year or two and go do something interesting and new with their career. But for those that do turn around and apply back to back, just really think hard about all the different ways that you've grown. And if there is a red flag, like there's a thing, and maybe you didn't address it the last time, then certainly, you're supposed to use that optional essay for anything that they might be wondering about. So if you've grown from some sort of learning experience, a failure, a weaker thing, anything, and you've grown from that, they love to see that. So don't ever leave them wondering about some potential, concern, like explain any potential concern to them. And if there's some more specifics to, Calvin's question or anybody else, I'm happy to kind of give a little intel with regard to somebody's unique story. So I can always do that offline.
You have been more than gracious, especially giving us some extra time. So thank you, everybody else. Thank you for being on. Obviously, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you with the GMAT and GRE journey. Hillary, the MBA application journey. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Hillary,
thank you all so much. Thanks for dialing in, and the sun finally came out here in California, so perfect. Yes. Bodes well for all of you, and thank you so much for having me, and it was really nice to meet you all, and I'm glad you found Brett somehow through this webinar, because you would be in great hands. It makes my job easier when your scores are high, so keep studying, please. And thank you, Brett.
Bye, guys. Take care, everybody.